Market intelligence for us, I would say there's two things that we concentrate on when we're talking about market intelligence. And the way I look at it is it has to be through the lens of how are we making our salespeople better or giving them an advantage in the marketplace. The first one is categories. So understanding category behavior, what a category has done in the past year or what a category may have ahead of it for the following year are all things that we can use to set up a marketplace model, which is important, but also arm our salespeople. So when they sit with a client, it's not, well, Fox is great, you should be with Fox. It should be, we understand what your headwinds are, your tailwinds are, what your problems are, and there's a Fox solution to that. And this last year was obviously the best example of how category intelligence was so important because it was such a fluid marketplace. And a lot of our clients were trying to figure out their business on the fly. And that was really important for us to keep up. So when we did get in front of them, we could say, okay, we understand what's going on and here's how we can help. The second piece would be competitive. And when I talk about competitive, it is more a benchmark. So we understand that we're getting the share in the market that we should be getting. But also, again, another opportunity for our salespeople to sit in front of a client and say, look, we understand, we know where you're spending and we know potentially why you're spending there, but give us the opportunity because we feel there's a share shift here that's going to benefit you and your business. So a lot of those go towards problem solving and arming our salespeople and giving them an advantage in the marketplace. And those trends, are obvious sometimes and not so much. You take the auto category, for example, there's a headwind of this shortage of semiconductors, but there's also this tailwind of moving towards electric vehicles. So there's a lot in there that tells us, okay, we can model around the auto category and this is what we should concentrate on, but this is also what we should be aware of.
How do you use standard media index, ad spend, and revenue data? And what are some of the challenges that Fox and your clients face today? And how do they use, or how do you use SMI market intelligence to support you?
Sure, it's a key component to our market modeling. And there was a really good example of that just this past week. We sat with SMI and we did a sort of recap of the NFL marketplace from this past year. It almost acts as like a report card for all the NFL partners in the network. So what was really good about that was it's very thorough and it allows us to take a look at pricing, inventory strategies, but also it breaks it down by regular season, by Thanksgiving, by playoffs. And we can really take a look at, okay, what were the things we did really well and what we need to continue to do, but also where were there maybe some blind spots that, when we get into the new season that we'll be prepared for. And also, again, like I mentioned before, there's category information in there that's vitally important to us. How are those categories behaving? Again, auto category is a bellwether category. Tech is a big category in the NFL. Were we getting our fair share? Fox has 42% of the NFL GRPs in the market. Are we getting 42% of the market share from NFL advertisers? And that's vitally important because, as Seth Winter always says, the NFL marketplace starts the minute after the Super Bowl ends. So having that conversation with SMI, getting comparative data, because we have our own data and we can certainly get lost looking at our own data, but having that comparative data and a look at the entire NFL marketplace and understanding what our competition's doing and kind of benchmarking ourselves against that, really helps us prepare for the following season.
So how does that help you with, how does this sort of data set help you with inventory management?
So it basically tells us where potentially the stresses may be. So much has to do in the NFL with scheduling, for example. Where's your Thanksgiving game going to air? Is it the early game? Is it the later game? Because that certainly is going to play into demand there. And postseason, obviously, we share a divisional round. So certain years we'll have 2 divisional games, while other years we'll only have 1. So that changes our market dynamics year to year. And even with the addition this past year of two additional wildcard games, one that went to CBS and one that went to NBC, there was that additional supply brought into the marketplace, and then we have to react to that. And this sort of data helps us be fluid in what can be a very, very fluid marketplace.
Michael, finally, I just wanted to ask you about some trends you're seeing from your perspective around the marketplace. What's happening, expectations of marketers, maybe how that's changed, and where things might be going in 2021.
Sure. I think the obvious thing to point to is the explosion of AVOD and SVOD services. That's probably the number one sort of challenge that we hear from marketers, and that we're getting the most questions about. We've done a lot of analysis recently, and just in the last decade alone, there have been 40 new AVOD/SVOD services that have come into the market, and that's really unprecedented. It makes you think of sort of the cable explosion of the late 90s, early 2000s. And there's so much more competition. And obviously we're a year into our acquisition of Tubi, but really Tubi is starting to become so important to us as a foundational piece, where we can go to marketers and advertisers and our clients and basically say, we have sports, we have news, we have entertainment, we like our portfolio because it's live. We also have it across every platform. So we're re-aggregating our audience. We can touch our audience no matter the platform that they're on. And that's super important. And it's also, working with SMI again on trying to get an idea of what is that AVOD, SVOD landscape? Who are potentially the winners and losers? Who's ahead? What does that landscape look like? Who are the leaders? And we also need to look at not only who's spending on the AVOD side, but we also need to take a look at consumption and consumption on the SVOD side, because while we're competing with all of them for dollars, we're also competing with them for time. So there's a lot to look at when you're kind of breaking down the AVOD, SVOD market. It's not that simple, and there's a lot of nuance to it. And that's the piece that we're always coming up against with our clients. There's a lot of questions around, where do you fit in? Where do they fit in? How can I make my dollars work with you as opposed to any of the other number of services that are out there?